And welcome back, everyone. Today is probably going to be a shorter video. I just wanted to speak about one thing, which is the St. Louis Grand Chess Tour Rapid and Blitz, which has just concluded. And I wanted to say that I really enjoyed watching that event. It was with commentary by Yasser Saravan, Peter Svidler, and I think it was Nazi Pekidze, who was on the commentating team. And there were some games and some stories from that which I wanted to share with you guys, because it was a very exciting event, which in the end Levon Aronian managed to win. And it was this typical type of blitz event, especially that some players, super strong players, elite players, like for example Fabi, who had a brilliant rapid event, in the blitz just had horrible days sometimes. And I wanted to make that video also for that purpose, to set sort of a reminder that that even happens to the best players in the world, like Lenier Dominguez, who's been a 2750 players for probably that many years, like I've been born. He had one day where he made half a point out of 9, I believe, if I check correctly, which is like, I cannot imagine how he felt after that. But it's just as a reminder that those things do happen, even to the best in the world. But I do also have some games with you to share. There was sort of a hilarious theme in one day in particular. It was, I think, 2 days ago. It was sort of the start of the Blitz event. First there was the Rapid, and after that concluded it was the Blitz. And overall the general standings counted. And in the very end, even though Fabi won the Rapid event with an outstanding performance, where he started with, I think, 7 out of 8, then in the Blitz he didn't do as well. So in the end, Levon Aronian won the overall standings in that event. And it is also part of the Grand Chess Tour overall. And in the Blitz, there was sort of a curious scenario that there were so many, well, there were 3 games where stalemate was a theme, which we don't see that often in top events specifically. And this was the first one between Levon Aronian and Fabiano Caruana from the Blitz round number 5. Levon has been winning for quite a long time. Maybe as a side note, it was quite interesting to see that he always went for the Philidor defense with the white pieces. Not that relevant for our theme, but it was still quite interesting to see. And I think he had pretty good results with it overall. And he slowly outplayed Fabi in that game and had a winning position or technically winning endgame for quite a long time. But here he had to make the sort of the final decision. And with seconds on the clock, so many things can happen, as also for absolute top players. And here Levon took on c6, which now is a drawn endgame, even though it's still pretty difficult for black, because the king is not really reaching this pawn and the king is sort of in a zugzwang position. Instead, what Levon needed to do is go king f4, with the point that if black takes here, he can go h7, and after king g7 he's winning the piece and therefore the game. But now it's only starting. So, of course, there were a couple of things there. It is a draw, but it's still not so easy. For example, here after knight b5, apparently it's lost because of king f3, but that's not really human to understand all of that. There are some ideas to kind of trap the knight and then put black into zugzwang. But what I really wanted to get to was a little bit later. It was here. Apparently, this is a technically winning endgame still, but h7 is the blunder. Computer says now king e3, and maybe white is in time to get closer with the king and then run into f8 g8. That could be a winning plan here. But instead h7 happened, and then we have this sort of position right here. Now, while watching the commentary, there is the immediate way to make a draw here, which is the move knight e4, which is already quite nice. So now we're just trying to take on f6 next, and however white captures on e4, it's going to be a stalemate. And if white doesn't do anything else, then we take on f6 and it's also going to be a stalemate. But instead Fabi played like this, which is also totally okay. And now we have this endgame, which, while looking at the live broadcast, still didn't look fully easy here. But here Fabi unleashed a super nice trick as well, which is king h8. So again, white cannot take on f8 because it's going to be stalemate. So Levon tried the move king f6. Now the only move, at least I believe the only move, is knight g6, because if knight h7, then we can take and then promote on the next move. Not to a queen though, because again it will be stalemate, but we can promote to a rook or just move the king, but this would be the quickest way to victory, and then it's going to be mate on the next move. But Fabi played knight g6. Again, however we take, it would be stalemate. It would be just be a draw. So Levon tried bishop e4. Now they moved around for quite a long time. Fabi actually achieved the completely correct defensive setup. Once king e7 comes, he goes back to g7. But then comes the final moment. Levon played king e7, and Fabi, probably already being sort of relieved that he saved the draw from a lost endgame, now went knight g6 basically immediately, 100% having in mind that the king is on f6 and that it's going to be stalemate. But Levon took on g6, and the curious thing was that, at least from what I could tell from the live stream, that Fabi extended his hand, and I think that he thought it was stalemate and that it was a draw. But then Levon sort of pointed out that he can still play king g7, and therefore Fabi resigned. So this is how Levon won this game. So let's head on to the next one, which was the Blitz round number 7. This one is not as exciting, but yeah, it was still quite nice. Here in this endgame, it was Aronian against Vachier. Before that, of course, many different things happened. I think both parties were winning at some point, but the ending was still somehow nice. That here after c6, of course, whenever black pushes the pawn, white can just get to the h corner, to the h1 corner, and once the king reaches there, it's a draw, even if white loses the rest of the material because black has the wrong color bishop. So that's also what Levon did here quite nicely. Just went knight e5 check, and after bishop takes e5, now the king reaches to h1. And apart from that, he can just pick up the pawn somehow, or go knight f3 or knight g4, knight f2. So if black doesn't take, it should be quite a simple draw. Even though white, now that I'm thinking, needs to be a little bit careful. Like if you would only go after the h4 pawn, let's just say white doesn't take on d4 and make a draw, then it could be a bit risky. Like if the king reaches g3, then h2 might be winning at some moment. So I guess at this point right here, if king d5, maybe the easiest is just to go knight g4 and then knight f2. Maybe like this, and then to pick up this pawn. And if this is a draw because the king reaches the corner. But anyway, what I wanted to talk about in this game was the final position of the game, which was this, and then it was a draw. So not as exciting, but it was still cool that it all happened on the same day. Now let's get to the final one. Dominguez against Fabiano Caruana, which again had many ups and downs. I think it was on that day where Dominguez had a pretty rough day. He had a pretty rough Blitz event in general, but one day was quite disappointing for him in general, to put it mildly. And here, for quite some time, Fabi has been winning. So Fabi has the black pieces. But before that, Dominguez was holding better. I honestly don't even fully remember what happened. But here was the final moment. Now I'm asking you, would you take on f6 or not? Obviously, black is completely winning here, is a piece up, and f6 is going to drop sooner or later. However, in case you figured it out already, king takes f6 is not the way to go for, because now white again has a stalemate trick, which is rook f1 check. Now if the king goes, for example, to e5, then I guess white could even take on f7 and make a draw with rook against knight and rook. But there is also another motive, like after king g6, now white played rook f6 check, and if black takes, it's going to be a stalemate, and if king g7 would happen, then rook f7, and it's also going to be a stalemate. So therefore, to answer the question which I asked in the beginning, black should not take on f6, but instead play basically any other move, like knight g5, for example, and then pick up the pawn on f6, and white probably has to resign in just a few moves here. So that was it for today. A bit of a shorter video, but I still thought it was quite entertaining and also sort of valuable for us to see that even the very best in the world do make these mistakes. Like sometimes I ask myself, why do I play that badly or so? But also like in the interviews, like there was one cool thing in the commentary that I think it was Levon who said he was talking to Fabiano Caruana, and they were saying to each other that they should write a book about their stupidity. So if those top players, the absolute best in the world, some of the best players of all time, do make those mistakes and think about them themselves like this, then probably we shouldn't be too hard on ourselves. So that's the lesson for today. Hope you enjoyed today's video, found value in it, and perhaps found it entertaining. Thank you for watching, and I'm going to see you soon.